Again, I am Amber Ward, Director of Field and Clinical Experiences. I'll go ahead and say that again since I just started the recording. And I want to introduce a couple of people that are on the call with us today. Miss Morgan Whaley, she is our administrative assistant here in the Office of Field and Clinical Experiences, and I'll let her unmute and introduce herself real quick.
Hi, Morgan Whaley. I'm the assistant in the Field and Clinical Office, like Miss Ward had just said. I'm here for anything you need. I'll be running background checks for you. Well, not background checks now, but I'll be answering the phones when you call. I will be answering any questions. I'm usually a primary contact email to get to Miss Ward or Dr. Abbott or Dr. Pritchett, which you'll meet in just a minute, or any of your professors. I can help contact you them as well. So if you'll just give me a call, email me with any questions you have, be happy to help you, and we're looking forward to a great semester.
Thank you, Ms. Whaley. Okay, so we also have Dr. Rachel Abbott as our Dean here at the College of Education. She was not able to join the call today. She's out of town on at a meeting, so she wasn't able to join us. But we also have Dr. Christopher Pritchett, the Assistant Dean, here on the call with us, and I will let him introduce himself real quick.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ward. Good afternoon. So I am, as of July 1st, as she said, I'm the new Assistant Dean and Associate Professor for the College of Education here at GSW. And I'm just honored to serve in this capacity, and I look forward to working with all the school districts. Just want to take just a moment to thank you for your willingness to serve. Students of GSW in this capacity, you play a critical role in the development of our student teachers. And from my own experiences, I know it requires a lot of additional work. However, it is a highly rewarding experience investing in the lives of other educators. So please consider me a resource. If I can ever help you in any way, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And again, welcome to the presentation this afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Ward, for allowing me to share, and I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pritchett. So like Dr. Pritchett said, we here at the College of Education, all of us would like to thank you for your willingness to serve as a master teacher for us this upcoming school year, whether it be for a fall student teacher or a spring student teacher. All of our student teachers will get to meet you all and start with you in just a few days when you start pre-planning. I know some of you are probably in your last few days of summer. I know a couple of school systems start back pre-planning next week. So I promise I'm going to make this orientation as painless as possible. I don't want to take up any more of your summer than I have to. I want to get you out of here and let you enjoy those last few hours, days of your summer break. I know how important it is for you all to have that break. So I wanted to mention real quick, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about our clinical specialists or university supervisors at this time, but I did want to mention how that works. So we have university supervisors that come out to observe and help mentor our student teachers. Now, sometimes we use our full-time faculty as these university supervisors, and sometimes we pull in part-time faculty. So as you can see here on this slide, I have our full-time faculty, just a bullet there for full-time faculty. I did not list out names of full-time faculty. However, the names that you see listed here are part-time faculty that may or may not be working with one of the student teachers. And that's really nothing that you have to worry about right now. Once a supervisor is assigned to your student teacher, that supervisor will reach out to you personally, and by email or phone call, they'll reach out to you and introduce themselves, and y'all will start talking about how the semester will look. So at this time, you don't have to worry about all these names, but I did want to include them on our Field and Clinical Experiences page as part of our office. So I'll start with the mission statement of the College of Education. The mission of the College of Ed is the preparation and continuous development of candidates from diverse populations to high levels of achievement. And then we have our conceptual framework here. I don't want to read all these to you, but here we have the 4 key concepts in our conceptual framework. You can see those there. And on the next slide, this is really important for our student teachers, the student learning outcomes. All 10 of these will be part of their summative portfolio whenever they're working through their student teaching semester. Actually, when they start with you for pre-planning, they will start working on some of these things for their summative portfolio. So this whole year for pre-planning, fall student teachers or fall field experience and spring student teachers, all of those things that they're working on this year will be part of their summative portfolio. So these 10 outcomes will show up again for them quite a bit throughout their student teaching semester. So we have a website, resource page for the field and clinical office, tinyurl.com/GSW live text. I will send this link out to you all in an email. I'll also send you a student teaching calendar, the student teaching handbook. I will not send you assignments related to the student teaching practicum. The students will get all of those assignments and they can discuss those with you. But I do want you to have on hand a copy of the calendar and a copy of the handbook. Those things can be found on the website, but Miss Whaley or I, one of us will send you an email with that so that you'll have that on hand. Later on in the PowerPoint presentation, I have just a screenshot of what the calendar will look like and how you can use the calendar to help you. But I will, Miss Whaley or myself will send that to you in an email. But you can also find things on the resource page. We put things on there for our student teachers, our master teachers, mentor teachers, our supervisors, clinical specialists. We have a tab for just about everybody on that resource page. So if you need something, you can go to that resource page, or I know sometimes it can be just as easy to email Miss Whaley or myself. If you need something or have a question, just shoot us an email or call us and we'll be glad to answer it. If you can't find on the resource page, or if you just would rather email, that'll be perfectly fine. We're here for you and we want to make this as easy as possible and as enjoyable as possible. So right now I am updating that resource page. I still have some spring 22 information on there, so I'm updating to fall 22. So if you were to go to the resource page today or even next week, it's probably not going to be updated yet. Give me about a week next week to get that updated, and then you can see the updated information on that. But like I said, just be expecting an email with the student teaching calendar and student teaching handbook from Miss Whaley or myself within the next week or so. So for our student teachers, before they student teach, they have to have a pre-service certificate. Miss Whaley was mentioning earlier about how she goes over background checks. That is part of their pre-service certificate. They have to apply for their pre-service certificate. The background check is included in that. The Georgia PSC handles that. We submit all of that to the Georgia PSC. They issue the pre-service certificate. Once the students have that pre-service certificate, we no longer have to get them to go through an outside background check, an outside agency or department for a background check. So the Georgia PSC handles all of that for us. On top of that pre-service certificate, we also require them to have liability insurance. Most of our students use Page for their liability insurance. We may have one or two occasionally that will use GAE, but most of them use Page. We do now have, as you all know, we have some traditional student teachers and we have some paid student teaching interns. For their liability insurance, if they're traditional student teachers, they can buy the student insurance. If they are being paid as an employee of a school system and they're a paid intern, they do have to purchase the professional liability insurance, just like some of you all may have through Page. They purchase that step up with their liability insurance as a paid employee of a school system. But we do require them to have that, and they do have to submit that in their VIA account for us before they start with you all. They also have to complete opening school experience. I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Before we can allow them to do their 15-week full student teaching practicum, they do have to have that opening school experience behind them. And then they also have to read over and accept the clinical experiences handbook. We have an affirmation page that we ask them to fill out once they have read over that handbook, so they have to do that before we allow them to start their student teaching practicum. As far as assessments go, for the Georgia assessments for the student teachers, they do have to take GACE 2 before they're certified. So they will be given eligibility to take GACE 2 the semester before they student teach. It's usually at midterm before they student teach. So if you have a spring student teacher and you hear them talking about the GACE, then they receive their eligibility to take that about midterm of this fall semester. So some of them may start talking in September, October, November area about taking the GACE. That's because they'll be getting their eligibility then to be able to start taking the GACE. The fall student teachers should have already had their eligibility. Some of them may have already taken the GACE. Some of them may take the GACE during their student teaching semester, and that's okay. They can take it. They have to at least attempt the GACE 2 before they can graduate. If they do not pass the GACE 2, it doesn't prevent them from graduating. However, it does, as you know, prevent them from being certified. So they can continue to take the GACE 2 after graduation to be certified. However, they have to at least attempt the GACE 2 to graduate from GSW. And then they also have to take the ethics assessment for Georgia, for the Georgia PSC. Some of our students right now, we're in like a transition phase. Some of our students took the ethics assessment at entrance when they were entering the program as juniors. However, some of them did not have to take it at entrance, but they do have to take it at exit. So at some point, whether they're taking it at the program entrance or the program exit, they do have to take and pass that Georgia ethics assessment before graduation, before they're able to be certified. And these things are nothing for you to have to worry about. I just want to kind of put a disclaimer in there. This is just something we tell you about just so that you're knowledgeable on that. That they may be talking about those kinds of things, but this is something that the student teachers have to be responsible for and do on their own. It's nothing that you have to worry about doing for them or with them. Okay, so now we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty about what all is going into student teaching. This will be for opening school experience and the 15 full weeks of student teaching. And I will kind of break it down, the difference in opening school experience and student teaching in just a few minutes. But when for this slide, this team will be who you'll be working with during both of those. So you are the master teacher. You're considered a master teacher for us if you have at least 3 years teaching experience and if your principal has recommended you to host a student teacher. Now, you may be hosting this student teacher in your own classroom, and that would be a traditional student teacher where they come in and you model for them and they learn from you in your classroom. However, you could be a mentor master teacher for an intern. So some of our student teachers are going to be paid interns this coming up school year. They'll have their own classroom. They will be the teacher of record, and you may be mentoring them through that. So they may not be actually in your classroom at all times like a traditional student teacher would be, but you are still considered a master teacher for them. You'll still be doing some of the same things as far as the observations and evaluations go. You'll do some of those same things that a master teacher would do for our traditional student teachers. So during their 15 weeks of student teaching, there will be 3 evaluations in VIA. Let me back up. So during opening school experience, pre-planning in the first few days of school, there'll be 1 evaluation in VIA for you to do for the student teacher. And then during those 15 weeks, there will be 3 evaluations in VIA for you to do. If you've had a student teacher in the past few years, you may remember we had 5 evaluations in VIA for you to do. Like every 3 weeks or so, during those 15 weeks, we would let you do an evaluation in VIA. However, we are backing that up to 3 now. We don't want to put any more on you than you already have on you. So we're backing that up to 3 evaluations. Our university supervisors used to do 2, and we're adding 1 to them. So you will be doing 3 on the student teacher, and the university supervisor will be doing 3 evaluations on the student teacher. And I'll talk about them a little bit more in depth in just a few minutes. So you'll also do some walkthrough observations throughout the semester, and I'll talk about those as well, but just, general walkthroughs, watching what they're doing, completing just an informal evaluation on them, just so that everybody is on the same page. That can be a time for you to be able to tell them some strengths or weaknesses that you see. But we have those all throughout the entire semester for student teaching. Also, you'll be able to go into VIA and see where the student teacher has logged their time. So let's say on August the 10th, they are there for 8 hours. They would go in their time log, and on August the 10th, they would enter 8 hours. So this is where you can go in and approve that time. So if you know of if there's a day that a student teacher is not there, you may want to just jot that down on your calendar that they were not there, so that when you do go in to approve their time, let's say they did enter time for that day, if they were not there, then you can deny that time log, and you can type and say the student teacher was not here on this day or something like that. If there's any discrepancies, we can look into the situation. We don't normally have issues with the student teachers and their time logs. They're usually very very honest on those time logs for the time that they're there. Now, if you go in a time log and you see a student teacher that's entering 8 hours every day and they're really only there 7 hours every day, then that might be something that you want to mention to them, like, hey, I noticed on your time log that you were entering 8 hours, but you're really only here 7 hours, or something like that. It could be something that you might want to reach out to me about and ask me about, but for the majority, I'll say that most of our student teachers are very honest on those time logs and enter their time. And we do tell them if they have to go take the GACE, for example, to put that in their time log. So they would be with you, 0 hours that day, but they need to put a note in their time log that they went to take the GACE on that day. So you may see things like that in the time log, but you'll be able to go in and approve or deny their time log in VIA. And then also a big important part for you is just communicating with their university supervisor, with them as student teachers, and then with me if you need to reach out to me for something. So that's you're the master teacher. Now for our student teachers, they are going to be completing student teaching assignments. During opening school experience, they'll have separate assignments. So they'll complete some during opening school, and then they'll complete more assignments during their student teaching semester. They'll be planning, instructing, and assessing in your classroom or in their own classroom if they're interns. And then they're learning for the most part. They're learning from you as their master teacher. They're learning from your school system, from your curriculum. We just put learns in there because they're just continuously learning throughout this whole process. And then we have the university supervisor. That's the ones I was mentioning earlier. So sometimes we use full-time faculty here at the college. Our professors will come out and observe our student teachers. They'll be considered their university supervisors. Sometimes we use part-time faculty to come out and be university supervisors. So these university supervisors will reach out to you. Once they're assigned, they will reach out to you toward the beginning of August and introduce themselves, and like I said, let you know kind of what the semester will be like, communicating with them. That way you'll have their information. So they will come out and they will conduct at least 2 in-person observations, and then they'll do 1 virtual observation on the student teacher while they're in their 15-week practicum. The supervisors do not come out during opening school experience, during the pre-planning in the first few days, because we know how hectic that is for all of you. So we don't want to add an extra person to come out there and watch our student teachers. So they do not come during opening school experience, but they will come at least 2 times during the student teaching practicum, and they will log on 1 time and do a virtual observation 1 time. However, they can come as many times as they would like. If they feel the student teacher needs extra support, or they're struggling in a certain area and they want to come back and observe a certain area, things like that, they can come as much as they want. But we do ask them to, at minimum, go to the schools with the student teachers at least 2 times. They will be communicating with you as the master teacher and the student teacher through email, phone calls, team meeting. I say Teams, but any kind of virtual meeting. Some use Teams, some use Zoom. They could communicate through virtual meetings, set up phone conferences. Sometimes they might set up a three-way conference if there's something that they wanted to talk to you and the student teacher about. The days of three-way calling are pretty much gone because we can all just log on, a virtual platform now and just have a meeting with three ways. So that might be something that they want to do, but a majority of the communication will probably come through email. Just because we know that your schedules are hectic and the best way to contact you all is through email. So that will be the majority of the communication that they will send to you. The university supervisors will also grade all of the student teaching assignments. So if you see a student teacher working on an assignment, please don't think that you're going to have to do any kind of grading for any of that. The student teachers turn all of that in to their university supervisors, and the supervisors assign them grades for that. And then we just like to say the university supervisors are our liaison between you all and your schools and us, GSW. They would be your first contact person if there's anything you need. Or myself, or Miss Whaley. So if you need anything, you could contact the university supervisor, myself, or Miss Whaley here in our clinical office. As far as the student teaching assignments, things like that, Miss Whaley and I, we don't have as much information about the grading of those assignments and things. So if there's any questions that the student teacher or you have for anything that they're doing on any of their assignments, it's probably best to reach out to the supervisors. But any general questions the supervisors could probably answer, or Miss Whaley or myself could answer. So I didn't mention this earlier, but if you have any questions at any point during this, please just unmute and interrupt me and ask your question, or you can type the question in the chat box. Miss Whaley is just kind of looking at the chat box to see if we have any questions, and she'll stop us if we do. I know I'm giving you a lot of information, and I do want to try to, get you out of here as quick as I can. So that's why I'm kind of moving fast. But if you have any questions, please just stop us or type in the chat box and we'll get to those questions. Okay, so I want to break down the difference in opening school experience and student teaching, the student teaching practicum. So the opening school experience is part of student teaching. However, they have to do this before they can actually start their 15 full week student teaching practicum. So in opening school experience, we have the student teachers start during pre-planning. So you all should meet your student teachers on the first day of pre-planning. If you all have an opening meeting at county office or at, your auditorium, things like that, if you have something like that, it is perfectly fine for our student teachers to go to that. The student teachers should have already reached out to you. There may be a couple that just got their placements recently that may not have had a chance to email you all yet. But for the majority, our student teachers have had their placements for a while now over the summer, and they should have reached out to you hopefully over the summer. So they should know, kind of what's going on whenever they're going to be coming for pre-planning, whether they need to go to an auditorium somewhere or whether they need to come to your classroom or things like that. I do have orientation with our student teachers tomorrow. So that is something that I will mention to them. If they do not know where they are going on the first day of pre-planning, that they need to reach out to you all and ask. So you may have some of those emails coming in and having them ask you where to meet. So during opening school, during pre-planning, any meetings that you have to go to for, curriculum, for anything, any of your professional development meetings, whether it be school-wide, grade level, county-wide, like I was saying, your county-wide opening meeting, any of those meetings, the student teachers, we tell them to go with you to those meetings. This is great information for them to get and to see because, you know, when they go and they start next year, you know, next school year, hopefully they all have their own classrooms. And when they start pre-planning on their own, they need to know that this is what happens during pre-planning. It's not all working in your classroom and getting your classroom set up. You all have meetings just about every day of pre-planning. So we want them to know that and to see that and see what happens during those meetings. So please tag them along during those meetings, have them sit with you and let them listen and take notes while you're there. And then the times that you are able to work in your classroom, have them, you know, with you there in your classroom. We do tell the student teachers to also go to open house or meet and greet, whatever you call it. We tell them to do that. We know that's after school hours, but that is a part of your pre-planning. So we do ask them to attend that as well. That way they can meet the students that they're going to be working with this upcoming year and meet the parents, and you can introduce them to the parents as your student teacher. Some of them, like I said, if they're student teaching in the spring, they may start with you during pre-planning and then not be back until January. However, it is good for them to still have already met the students and some of the parents. So please let them attend open house with you. We do tell them that they can be on the same schedule that you are on during your pre-planning and your first few days of school. So for example, if your principal asks you to be there from 8 to 4, then that's when the student teacher needs to be there, from 8 to 4. If you decide on your own that you still have too much going on and you need to stay in your classroom to get stuff done until 5 or 6 one night, the student teacher would not be required to stay with you. However, some of them may want to just to see what's going on. So we just ask that the student teachers stay with you during your required times of pre-planning and those first few days of school. I know some, you know, on the last day of pre-planning, the day that you have open house, your principal may let you have a lunch break, a longer lunch break or something, because you have to be there later that night. And that's fine for the student teacher to do things like that. If your principal has said for you, you know, you all to do that, that's fine for the student teacher to do the same. Let's see, I'm trying to think about the schedule. If there's any questions about, you know, your schedule that your principal has set out for you, if there's any questions, student teacher, if they, you know, need to reach out to us and ask us specific questions about like a time for open house or a time for, you know, for them to be there or not, they can do that. There are sometimes questions, and if they need to reach out to us, that's perfectly fine if there's something that's not clear for them. So some school systems have pre-planning for 4 days, some do 5 days, some do more. So our student teachers are asked to start on day 1 of pre-planning and do all of the pre-planning days. And then the amount of the first few days of school would depend on how many pre-planning days you had. So if you had 4 pre-planning days, then the student teacher would need to come 6 more days of the first few days of school to make their 10 full days. Opening school experience, we asked them to have 10 full days. Now, normally we would ask them to have 10 consecutive days. However, this school year, when we've started looking into some of the calendars, some of those student teachers may not be able to get those 10 full days consecutively. For example, Lee County starts on August 1st, according to my records. So our student teachers, if they're spring student teaching and they have fall classes here on campus, they have to be back on campus August 10th. And we can't excuse them for classes to come to the schools if they haven't gotten their 10 full days. So, for example, Lee County, they should be able to get 7 consecutive days with you. And then 3 more days, they'll have to just space out throughout August to get those 3 more days. Sly County, y'all are starting a little bit later. So from my record, Sly County is going to start on the 4th. So the students may, they could come for 4 consecutive days, and then we're going to tell them to please go on August the 12th. It looks like August the 12th is Sly County's first day, so that if they do not have classes here on campus, to please go on that first day, if at all possible. The first day is so important for them to be able to see, but then they'll need like 6 more days throughout August. So, you know, it's really going to depend. We have Crisp County. You all start pre-planning next week. So those student teachers should be able to get 10 consecutive days before their classes start. The same with Colquitt County, Tift County. You all start early enough that they should be able to get their full 10 days before they have to come to class. If you have a specific question about your Sumter County, it looks like they should be able to get 10 full days in Sumter. Taylor County, it looks like they should be able to get 10 days in Taylor. Worth County, it looks like they should be able to get 9 consecutive days, and then they may have to come 1 more day at some point in August. That's the counties that I have jotted down right in front of me, but if there's a specific question about your county and the days that they need, just let me know. But we are going to tell the student teachers that they need to communicate this with you. So if they do have to come back for 3 more days in August, they need to let you know what 3 days they're going to be there, so you will have that information. But we're going to tell them that most importantly, they need to go as many consecutive days as they can before they start back to class. And if at all possible, to be able to go on the first day of school, but to see the first day of school. I know that's kind of a lot of jumbled up information at one time, especially with different counties having different start dates. Are there any questions right now about any of the scheduling, the dates, the 10 full days, pre-planning, any of that? Are there any questions about any of that right now? Okay, so if you do have a question, just type it in the chat box. We'll get to it. So during opening school experience, I want to start with the student teacher. So the student teacher will complete assignments while they are out there for those 10 full days. We will have these assignments due like at the end of August, so they can start working on them while they're out there with you, but then they'll also have time in August to complete these and get these submitted. If they're fall student teachers, they're probably going to go ahead and get as much done in those first 10 full days before they actually start into the student teaching semester, because they will go right into the student teaching semester right after pre-planning, and they'll have student teaching assignments to work on. If you have a spring student teacher, they have a little bit more leeway as far as, you know, getting these assignments done. So they will be doing a host school information sheet. This is where they'll collect information about your school, demographics, you know, population, things like that about your school and your county. They'll turn in that during opening school. Also, they'll do a letter of introduction. So we ask them to write a letter of introduction to the students and the parents. Now, this is up to you if you would like to send this letter of introduction to your students and parents. A lot of our master teachers do go ahead and give this letter out to the students and parents in their take-home folders. I say take-home folders. I'm used to elementary. I used to teach elementary. So, but for our middle and high school, I don't know if y'all do take-home folders, but at some point, if you wanted to send the letter home from the student teacher, this is just introducing themselves, telling them that they are a GSW student and they will be student teaching with you. For our interns, we also ask them to write the letter of introduction. However, theirs may be worded a little bit different. They are going to be the teacher of record, but we do want their parents and students to know that they are a GSW intern and they're, you know, finishing up their year at GSW. So the letter of introductions may look a little bit different for interns or traditional student teachers, but it's up to you as the master teacher if you do want to send that letter of introduction home. If you do not, that's okay, but we do ask them to go ahead and submit that as one of their assignments. They're also going to write a reflection about their 10 full days in the classroom for their university supervisor to read. The fall student teachers will go ahead and be assigned a university supervisor. The spring student teachers will not be assigned a supervisor until January when they come back. So they are going to keep this reflection in their notebooks, and the reflection will be there for their university supervisors to read whenever they start with them in January. We also asked them to submit their philosophy of education during opening school experience. Most of them wrote a philosophy of education back in their intro courses, so we asked them to look at that and update that and then submit an updated copy of their philosophy of education during this opening school experience. We also asked them to go through the Google Classroom training online through Google. And then we asked them to create an online classroom. I'll go into that a little bit more in just a few minutes. But basically, we want them to have some experience in online classrooms. So I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more in just a few minutes. So that's our student teachers assignments. This is just during those 10 days, and then we give them throughout August to work on those. And then they have different assignments during student teaching. So this is just during those first 10 days of opening school experience. So for you, there's not a whole lot that you have to be responsible for during opening school experience, except for we ask that you check your VIA account to make sure it's working correctly. For those of you that have never used our VIA platform, I will be sending an email whenever I get it updated. I'm still in the process of updating VIA and getting all of your information put in there as the master teachers. So as soon as I get that updated, I will send you all an email saying that VIA is ready to be used. And for those of you that have never used it before, I'll send you information about how to log on for the first time. If you've never used it. I feel like VIA is pretty user-friendly. There may be a couple of things that you have questions about, but please feel free to let me know if you do. So once you are in VIA, at the end of those 10 days that the students are there, we're going to ask you to just go in and complete one evaluation for the student teacher while they were there during that pre-planning and first few days of school. I do understand that on this evaluation, there may be things that you did not see the student teacher do during those 10 days. For example, assessment. Assessment is part of the evaluation. You may not see the student teacher do assessment during those 10 days. It's perfectly fine to mark NA for those things that you do not see the student teacher do during those 10 days of opening school experience. There are things like professionalism, communication, things like that on the rubric that you would be able to score, but things like assessment, collaboration, you should be pretty good with that. You should be able to see them collaborating within the first 10 days. But like I said, if there's anything that you're unsure about, it's perfectly fine to mark NA for that. I'll talk about the evaluations a little bit more in just a second as well. So that's just one evaluation at the end of those 10 days that we ask for you to complete in VIA. And then we also ask for you to look at their time logs in VIA and make sure that those 10 days that they said that they're there, that they were actually there. If there's any discrepancies in that, just deny those hours or let me know and we'll look into that in more detail. We ask the student teachers to submit their liability insurance and all of these assignments in that VIA group. However, you don't have to worry about any of that. The only thing that you'll be looking at once you get in there is that one evaluation and then their time log. So that's all for you during opening school experience. If you have any issues with VIA, just let me know as soon as you can so I can get in and try to get that fixed. There was an issue last semester where I had to call via the customer service and they had to help me out with an issue. So if you do have an issue, just let me know as soon as you can and I'll try to get that fixed for you. So that is what's going on during opening school experience. Like I said, I'm sorry, I'm kind of throwing all of this at you at one time. So if you previously were a mentor for us before 2019, you may have used live text. We've changed to VIA live text, and actually now it's called something different. It's called Student Learning and Licensure. However, it's still the vialivetext.com. So we are still calling it VIA right now just because it's vialivetext.com. However, when you log in, it may say something like Student Learning and Licensure. When you log in, you should have access to your student teachers information there, and their evaluation and time log should show up for you. If you can't see it yet, it's because I haven't added all the information in there. Like I said, I am in the process of updating VIA, and we're adding the student information and the master teacher's information in there this week and next week. So you may not be able to see it yet. One more thing I want to say about VIA, if you happen to have had any graduate courses at GSW, so if you used VIA for a graduate course and you had your radar email associated with VIA for that, that's a completely separate account than what you'll be using for the student teacher. As a master teacher, you'll use your school email address. For example, if you teach in Crisp County, you'll use your first initial last name at crispschools.org. Same way with any of the other counties, you'll use your school email address for this master teacher VIA account. You would not use your radar email address if you have taken graduate courses in the past, or even if you're currently in any graduate courses. That VIA account will be completely separate from this master teacher account. So I just wanted to stick this in here about opening school experience and student teaching changing a little bit since COVID. You know, we're hopefully on the downhill side of COVID. So we did have to change up some stuff whenever COVID hit back in 2020, and some of our student teachers were right in the middle of that, and they had to go to online teaching right in the middle of the pandemic. And then our last school year, it was a little bit better, but we still did have some schools that were doing some online learning. So we've had to kind of tweak some of our assignments for that, for our students to be familiar with online classrooms and online learning. We do ask them to complete that training for Google Classroom. We want them to have training in some sort of platform. We do know that all school systems, all of our partner schools do not use Google Classroom. We are aware of this, and we know that some of you may use Teams, some of you may use Seesaw. There's all different kinds of platforms out there that the schools are using. But we do want our student teachers to be aware of how to create a classroom online and have training in some type of classroom. So we are going to ask them to go through the Google Classroom training, and then we are going to ask them to create their own virtual classroom. Now, this virtual classroom that they create, this is not something that you have to add your students to. This is just something that they're going to be using for GSW. And this is for our traditional student teachers and our interns. If you are in a school system that makes you, as the master teacher, as you know, teacher of record, they make you create your own virtual classroom, then our paid interns will be having to do that anyway. So they're going to be able to use their own virtual classroom that you're having to create for your school system. But our traditional student teachers will also have to create some type of virtual classroom to use for their student teaching assignments. So they're going to create that during opening school experience, and then they'll use it more throughout the 15 weeks during student teaching. I think that's what I just said. So they'll use it during to post some assignments and during their student teaching semester. So they're going to be asking you some questions during pre-planning about the virtual platform that you use in your school system. So if you do use Google Classroom or you use the Google platform, they'll be asking questions about that. We want them to be familiar on what platforms that you use. In the event that you had to go virtual for some reason during this school year, we want them to know about the virtual platform ahead of time, and have them create their own classroom in that platform that you use. So for example, if you use Google Classroom, we want them to create a Google Classroom. If you use Microsoft Teams, we want them to create a classroom for Microsoft Teams. If you use Seesaw, we'll want them to go in and use Seesaw. So they're going to be doing Google training no matter what, but then we want them to create a classroom based on whichever platform you use at your school. I hope that makes sense. Now, we will be going into in depth about this tomorrow with our student teachers at their orientation. So I'm sure they're going to have lots of questions for us. about this. But this will be the first time that they have that we've asked them to create a classroom like this. They've never done it before in any of their classes. So they, like I said, they may ask us a lot of questions about this, and we may have to help them through this. This is our first semester doing this with them. So before, we had all of our student teachers create a Google Classroom, but we did have some feedback from master teachers saying, well, we don't use Google, we use something else. And so this semester we want to try to have them create the platform, the classroom in the platform that you actually use in your school system. Okay, so moving on to the student teaching experience and what that's going to look like. So for our fall student teachers, if you have a fall student teacher, they will start with you at pre-planning and the first few days of school. They're not going to stop. They're going to continue on from day one of pre-planning all the way until their last day on November the 30th. So they're not going to have a break in their opening school experience and their student teaching. They're going to continue straight through. The spring student teachers are a little bit different. So they are the ones that will complete those 10 full days. We have to make sure they get those 10 full days. We know the fall student teachers will get their 10 full days because they have to be there until November 30th. However, our spring student teacher, we have to check and make sure they get their 10 full days during pre-planning in those first few days and throughout August if they have to come some more days throughout August. And then for fall field experience, some of these student teachers that are student teaching in the spring will have some field experience to complete in the fall. Our elementary education majors, most of them are going to be coming back to you, to your classroom for 3 weeks during the fall semester. So, and that will be, I think it's the last week in September and the last 2 weeks in October, right in the middle of the semester. So they will come to you. So they'll come to you for 10 days at the beginning, some days in September, some days in October, and then they'll be back with you in January. Special education, those students will come some on Tuesdays and Thursdays throughout the fall semester. They'll complete some field experience with you. Some of them may even do more than Tuesdays and Thursdays, depending on their schedules. Some of them may be able to do 4 full weeks with you plus some Tuesdays and Thursdays, but they all are going to have some different schedules. So we are going to communicate to the student teachers to please make sure they let you all know what their schedule looks like and when they are going to be there, because they all do have such different schedules. It's hard for us to let you know individually what day Jane Doe will be with you and what day Billy Brown will be with you. So we do ask them to communicate that with you because they all do have such different schedules. Middle grade, secondary, music, and PE are even more different than any of the other ones. They have to complete a certain number of hours during the fall semester. Some of them may not even have any hours during the fall semester, depending on how their class schedules work. So if they do have hours, they may have 15 hours. They may have 60 hours. They may have 120 hours. It just really depends on what classes they're in the fall. So some of them you may see none during the fall semester, and some of them you may see quite a bit during the fall semester. So just be prepared to, have them tell you what their schedule looks like, and if they are coming back to you during the fall semester, we want to make sure that they give you all that information before time so that you'll know when they're there. And then after that fall semester, they will all return to you in early January for their 15 weeks of student teaching. We don't have a set student teaching calendar yet for the spring semester. That some of those dates still have to be approved, but we're looking at maybe around January 9th, having their orientation, and then them starting with you around January 10th. So they will not start as early as you all. I know you all probably will go back around that first week in January. They're probably going to start more in that second week of January. All right, I want to stop right here for just a second. Do we have any questions right now? I know I'm giving you a lot of information. Okay, we'll go ahead. Okay, so during these 15 full weeks, while they're doing their student teaching practicum, we try to break it down into 3 sections. So week 1 through 5, we tell the student teachers to gradually begin taking on responsibilities in the classroom. So let's say you are a first grade teacher and you teach all subjects. We ask the student teacher to maybe on week 1, do a few responsibilities, like maybe you should try taking attendance or taking up, the take home folders, taking up things like that, helping students with book bags, arrival time and dismissal time, things like that. Some of those responsibilities. During week 2, we tell them to go ahead and start doing lesson plans and start taking on lessons. So maybe during week 2, they take on your math lesson and try teaching some of those math lessons. During week 3, then we tell them go ahead and take on something else, another responsibility. So maybe they're teaching reading. So during week 3, they would be still doing that attendance, dismissal, arrival time, all of that. They're still doing math, but they're also taking on reading now. So they're doing more and more. Week 4, maybe they add science into that. So they're doing all of that other stuff. They're doing math, reading, and science. And then week 5, they're taking on even more. By week 6 through 10, we're hoping that the student teacher takes on the majority of lessons and responsibilities in your classroom. Now, this is a big deal. So I do want to talk about this just a little bit. We understand that your students, their test scores are on you, right? So we understand that, the days of just handing your classroom over to a student teacher are gone. We understand that, it's not very easy to just say, okay, here you go, teach this lesson, and this lesson, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. We know that those days are gone. So we encourage you all and our student teachers to co-teach as much as possible. Now, I will say, if you have a student teacher that is just jam up and they are doing an awesome job in week 1 through 5, and you think they can take on all this and they can handle it, then by all means give them the reins and give them as much as you can to let them learn. However, if you see that the student, you're not comfortable just giving up your classroom to a student teacher, we want you to co-teach with them and help model for them that teaching, those lessons. We want you to be involved in those lesson plans that they're making, and you look over those lesson plans and make sure that what they're delivering to your students is what you want them to be delivering, and be a part of that. So co-teach with them. Now, a lot of our student teachers have never been through co-teaching training. So we are actually going to do a co-teaching workshop tomorrow when our student teachers come for orientation. We're going to go through a 3-hour co-teaching workshop in the morning with them. We want them familiar with the different models of co-teaching and what that looks like, because we do know that, but especially after COVID, so many of our students are, grade levels behind, and those test scores are on you, and we know that it's hard to just give your classroom away. And so we want them to understand that they're not going to just be walking into your classroom and thinking that it's, their responsible, we just don't want them to think that it's all on them. We want them to know that you're there, to support them and co-teach with them. But like I said, we may have a handful of student teachers that are jam up and you're like, you got it, you go for it. So during the week 6 through 10, we're hoping that the student teacher is actively teaching throughout the entire day, throughout all subjects, all class periods. If you change classes, we're hoping by week 6 through 10, they're involved in the full day of teaching. And then week 11 through 15, we tell the student teachers to start giving back those responsibilities. So let's say that earlier I used the example for a first grade classroom. Let's say you teach secondary history and you have 4 classes during the day of 4 history classes during the day. So as they took on 1 class each week, they'll start giving you back 1 class each week. So week 11, they may give you back block 1, your first block students. Week 12, they may give you back block 2. So now they're only doing block 3 and 4. By week 14, they may be doing 1 block or 1 subject or 1 class a day, maybe doing some things with that. But by the last week, they've pretty much given you back all the responsibilities in your classroom. So I want to stop right here and ask if there are any questions about any of this. Like I said, I know this is, we have questions every semester about this from master teachers. Like, I want to be there to support the teacher. I want to model for them, but I just don't feel comfortable giving my classroom up to a student teacher whenever the students' scores are, on me. And so that's why we wanted to talk about that during this. And we want to teach our student teachers about co-teaching and what that looks like. All right, well, I'll go ahead and move on through. So while they are in that 15-week practicum, they have some assignments to do for their student teaching. They'll be graded by their university supervisors. They actually are in 3 courses during their 15-week practicum, so they get 3 grades. So they may get an A in 1 class, a B in 1 class, and an A in another class. So they're in actually 3 classes for student teaching. It's like if they get an A in 1 class, they don't have to get A's in all of them. They could get A, B, C, A, B, A, all B's, all A's. They get 3 separate grades for each, for those student teaching courses. So during the student teaching, they will be doing reflections. Their university supervisor will tell them how they want that, whether they want a reflection weekly, a reflection every other week, monthly, whether they want, 3 reflections throughout the whole semester. They may be different. So let's say there's 2 student teachers at your school. One university supervisor may tell one to do one thing and one may tell another to do another thing. So the reflections may look different for all of our student teachers. That's just based on how the university supervisor wants to assign those. The lesson planning, the traditional student teachers and the interns are going to be a little bit different with their lesson planning. So if they are a paid intern and they are the teacher of record, we will tell them to submit the lesson plans that they have to submit for your school. So whatever your principal asks for, whatever they have to do for your school, that's what they'll submit for us as well. That's what they'll be graded on by their university supervisor. Now, our traditional student teachers are a little bit different. So for the first 3 weeks of them lesson planning, we're going to ask them to write the long GSW lesson plans, the format that we have made for lesson planning. So we're only going to ask them to do that for at least 3 weeks. Now, if it looks like there's students struggling with writing lesson plans and the supervisor wants them to write those lesson plans longer, they may ask them to do that. But at a minimum, we're going to ask them to do those long, drawn-out GSW lesson plans for 3 weeks, and they submit those. And then after that, if their university supervisor thinks, okay, you got this lesson planning down pat, then they can start using your lesson plans that you use in your classroom. So they can take those lesson plans that you use and modify them and submit those lesson plans for the remaining weeks of their student teaching practicum. They also will be doing an ISL assignment, impacting student learning. They'll be assessing using the data from the assessments and then assessing again for part of that ISL. They'll also be doing a digital learning assignment. So this will be where they're going to be using some digital platforms to create videos to either enhance or remediate some of their lessons that they're using. So we'll tell them to use YouTube videos or TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, whatever platform they want to use to make short videos to remediate or enhance their lessons that they're planning. Now, this is an assignment for them to turn in to us. However, we want them to utilize this in your classroom. So, you know, if they make an enrichment video on, I don't know, the life cycle of a frog. Let's say, you know, your students are talking about the life cycle that week, and the student teachers, as part of their digital learning assignment, they make this video. We want you, you know, to use that if you can in your classroom and show that video to the students, or send that video home to the parents for them to watch later on as a enrichment to the lesson that they did. Or either if you have those struggling learners and the student teachers do remedial videos, we would love for you to be able to use those videos for those, you know, struggling learners, and send those home. Just, you know, short 3-minute videos on, you know, enriching or remediating a certain lesson that they have done in the classroom. And then they'll be doing that throughout the semester. So they'll do 7 different digital learning videos throughout the semester. And then their summative portfolio at the very end. I talked about that a little bit at the beginning, those 10 outcomes. They'll be working on that throughout their student teaching semester. So things that they're doing, for example, like the ISL, when they do those assessments and then they use that data and then they do a post assessment, they'll use all that kind of stuff in their summative portfolio. So things that they're doing during the student teaching semester, they will collect and keep so that they can put together a portfolio at the very end. And grading, I mentioned this before, grading, the university supervisor assigns all the grades. You don't worry about any of the assignments that they're doing as far as grading goes. Now, they may want you involved with some of their assignments. They may want you to know what they're doing, talk to you about some things for their assignments, and we hope that they will. We hope that they'll ask, you know, for support during, you know, while they're doing those assignments. We hope they'll ask you for your support in that. But you're not responsible for any grading of any of that. The university supervisor will also use information from you, the observations that you do and the evaluations you do. They'll use some of that information to be able to grade as well. There's the 3 different courses, like I mentioned, that they were graded on are going to be, one course is content knowledge, one course is teaching skills, and the last course is professionalism. So during those evaluations and observations, the university supervisor will break down those scores and use information from you that they may have communicated with you by phone, email, things like that. And then they'll use their grades from their assignments to determine the final grades in those 3 courses. So observations, this is the, you know, informal checklist type observations that we will put throughout the entire 15-week semester. The student teacher will be able to give you a paper copy of this, and they will keep this in their student teaching notebook. And they're also required to take a picture or scan it and submit it in VIA. You're not required to submit this to us. The student teacher is required to submit this to us. So I put a screenshot of what they look like. If you've had a student teacher recently, you probably remember these. But these are just really quick checklist and walkthroughs. One of them is like a 3 to 5 minute walkthrough observation, just watching what the student's doing at that time and making, you know, notes on the paper copy for them to have. This is a great time to conference with them about some strengths and weaknesses you may see before you actually do an evaluation on them. So they'll have a few of these observation checklists before an evaluation is submitted in VIA, so they kind of know what's going on. If they know, I mean, if you've told them during these checklists that their weakness is classroom management, then they already are going to know that they have that weakness there, and they're not going to be surprised when they see that on the evaluation that you complete for them. But like I said, you don't have to worry about finding these or where these are at. The student teacher should bring these to you on the week that they're due. And we're going to tell them to please give them to you at the beginning of that week. And just any time during that week that you say, oh, you know, they're in the middle of teaching, let me grab that form and do that checklist on them. Any time is fine. It doesn't have to be a specific subject that they're teaching, a specific class they're teaching, just at any point in the day, even if it's transition time and you want to observe them during transition. Maybe transition is a strong point for them. Maybe you want them to know you're doing this great. Like, these are the things that are working really well. So it could be at any point during the day that you do these observations. And then if you want to make a copy of these, that's perfectly fine for you to copy these and keep these. But we will have the student teachers submit these, so we'll have a copy in VIA as well. And then the student teacher will need to keep them in their notebook. And then the more formal evaluations in VIA are the teacher candidate evaluations, the TCE for abbreviation. This is where I was saying that you would do 3 of these in VIA. Previously, we had our master teachers do 5, but we've backed it up to 3. So throughout the semester on the student teaching calendar, I've put dates in there for the student teachers to remind you that one of the TCEs are due in VIA. In VIA, when you log in, you'll see something that it should say something like Teacher Candidate Eval 1, Teacher Candidate Eval 2, Teacher Candidate Eval 3, and then I'll have on there Master Teacher Complete, so you'll know that that is the one you do. You'll also see some in there that say University Supervisor Completes, because like I said earlier, our supervisors will do at least 3 on them, and you all will do 3 on them. So some of them will say University Supervisor Completes. Just make sure you're clicking on the one that says Master Teacher Completes. So in these, it's in rubric form. You can click expand rubric on the side, and a rubric like this where I have the screenshot here will come up for you. Just click consistent, inconsistent, or inadequate. Now, I do want to mention that it is perfectly okay, and we do tell our students that in the beginning of student teaching, you are probably not going to be consistent in all of these points on your rubrics. It's okay if it's inadequate or inconsistent in the very beginning. I put a point here. We like to see progression from opening school experience and throughout the 3 evaluations in student teaching. So like I said, in opening school experience, you may not even see instructional strategies. So you may not even be able to score consistent, inconsistent, or inadequate. You may have to score NA or just score inadequate because you didn't see them doing that. But the whole point is, we tell our students we want to see that progression that you make throughout from your opening school experience throughout student teaching. So it's okay if your master teachers give you a 1 or 2 in the beginning. We hope you're making 3s by the end. There may be some things that you're still inconsistent on at the end of student teaching, and that's okay too. 2s are not, the end of the world. There may be some things, instructional strategies that may be inconsistent at the end. They may still need a lot of work, a lot of help on some of those instructional strategies. Differentiation, that's a big one that they probably are still going to need, work on throughout the semester. So when we pull up an evaluation and we see that they are consistent with differentiation at the very beginning, we would know that student teacher must really have it all together, because we all know that differentiation it takes time. So we like to see progression throughout the semester, and I just want you to know that it's perfectly fine if you score NA if you do not see it yet, or if you score those 1s and 2s, in the beginning, and then hopefully see that progression towards the end. And then comments on the rubric, there is a place, you can't see it on this screenshot, but there is a place where you can make a comment on the actual rubric. When you expand it, you can make a comment, or you can just make a comment back on the home page for the overall comments. So you can make comments in either place. You don't have to make comments on every element, or you don't have to make comments every time you do an evaluation. But if you see something that they're really struggling with, if you would just make a quick comment on the rubric, for them to be able to see what they need to work on, and also for the university supervisor to be able to see what they need, support with, because that's what they're there for. They're there to support them if they are struggling with differentiation. and you point that out on the rubric, that's something that the university supervisor can try to work with them on. So we want, we do want you to be honest and let us know that. If you see something that they're just doing really well on, those comments are perfect as well. If you want to make a comment about something that they're doing great on, just to give them that pep, and just to be able to see that they're doing really well on a certain area, a certain element. So like I said, you don't have to make comments in every element. You don't have to make comments every time, but if you see some things that really stand out to you, please do just put, those comments in there so that the students can see it and the supervisors can see it. The supervisors will be able to see this evaluation. I do want to point out that it gives a total score up at the top, and it shows a percentage. Well, whenever all threes are checked, it will show a 100%. But this grade is nothing that's going in a grade book. If you click NAs or if you click ones or twos, you're going to see that percentage score go down. And student teachers sometimes get really upset about that because, they see a 55% and they're thinking that that's going to hurt their student teaching grade. It's not going to hurt them. It doesn't go, that grade doesn't actually go in a grade book. We do use these points as part of their grade, but if we see that progression throughout the semester, that's really what we're looking for. Okay, so this is just a screenshot of part of the calendar. This is what their calendar will look like. I'll be giving the fall student teachers their calendars tomorrow, and this is what I mentioned that Ms. Whaley and I would send to you all so that you would have. If you notice in red, it says Master Teacher completes observation number 1, and then I titled it so that whenever I showed you back here, I'll go back to that slide. These observations here, you might be able to see where it says professional activities observation number 1. That would be the one that you would complete on that week. However, the student teachers are the ones that are supposed to be bringing this to you, so you shouldn't have to worry about finding this on those weeks. But we do want you to have a calendar so that you can keep up with kind of where they are. In blue, you'll see where it says Master Teacher completes Teacher Candidate Evaluation number 1 in VIA. That's the more formal observation that I was talking about here in VIA, this one in VIA. So there will only be 3 of these throughout the semester. The observations, there's 10 of those throughout the semester, but please don't take a lot of time on those. It's just a checklist. See how they're doing. Just jot some notes down on some strengths and weaknesses for them, and just use that as a talking point, really, to talk to them each week about some things that's going on. So there are 10 total of those throughout the semester, and there are 3 total evaluations in VIA throughout the semester. So these student teachers will get a copy of this calendar tomorrow. Also, their seminars are on here. There's maybe some seminars that they have to come to during the day. So they may tell you, I have to be at GSW on this day. I won't be in your classroom this day. So for example, on September 1st, they have a behavior management seminar. It doesn't start until 5. So if they're close, to Americus, then they may not have to leave your classroom early. However, if they're 2 or 3 hours away, they may have to leave a little bit early to drive to Americus. There's some of them that are online and some that are here on GSW campus. So they should let you know ahead of time if they're going to have to be out one day for a seminar or if they have to leave early for a seminar. So at the very end of the 15 weeks, whether it be that November 30th date or in the spring semester, will probably be around the end of April, there will be 2 summative evaluations at the very end. The professional dispositions for the student teacher, that will be in VIA for you to complete as well. That's in rubric form also, just completing that rubric in VIA. You can expand that rubric. You can write comments in that one as well. It works similar to the others. You don't have to, but you can in that, and that'll be at the very end. And then there's also a three-way evaluation. We started doing this about a year ago for our three-way evaluations. And basically what this is, you will be doing an evaluation on the actual student teacher, and you'll be doing an evaluation on the university supervisor. And questions like, I don't have a screenshot of that in the PowerPoint, but it's questions like, you know, how did the university supervisor work with you? Did they contact you? Did they make that initial contact in the beginning? Things like that. So this is just a way for us to, you know, see how our university supervisors are doing out there working with you all. Now, our university supervisors and our student teachers, they'll do a three-way evaluation as well. So our university supervisors will do an evaluation on you and the student teacher, and then the student teacher will do an evaluation on you and the university supervisors. Just a three-way evaluation for us to have the data on how everyone is doing out in the field. And then the data is only shared with the leadership team here at the College of Ed at GSW. So when you submit that three-way evaluation, the student teacher can't see what you say and the university supervisor can't see what you say. So please be honest. If there was an issue with a university supervisor or a student teacher and you want us to be aware of that, you know, maybe you tried to contact the university supervisor and it took 4 days for them to respond to you. You know, things like that would be stuff that we might need to know in the future. And on the other end of the spectrum, if the university supervisor just completely exceeded your expectations, then let us know that as well, so that we know in the future that they would be really great university supervisors to use for our student teachers. So our leadership team goes over and reviews that data from those evaluations. And that's at the very end of the student teaching practicum. So and I know it's 3:18-ish, and so these next few slides, I'm just going to kind of go through them really quickly. I will send this PowerPoint to you all, and I'll send the recording to you all as well, just so you can go back if you need to reference anything that I talked about. I'll send the recording, I'll send the PowerPoint, and then also we'll be sending that calendar and handbook that has a lot of information on it as well. So these next few slides you may want to look at when you have time. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because I do want to, you know, make sure if you have any questions that we can get to those right before we go. So I don't want you to have to do this, but if you'll just think about what are some of the characteristics of a great teacher. As a mentor, your task and your mission is to model and support quality teaching and be that great teacher for these student teachers to learn from. This is just a few things students and teachers have said about great teachers when we ask them, tell us what a great teacher is. This is some things that they have said. And like I said, I'm just going to go through these quickly. And then also think about how will you, the mentor, help your student teacher incorporate all the qualities. So we know that you as a mentor have these qualities because you've been recommended by your administration, and they, you know, they say, yes, let's put a student teacher with this person. They've got it. They know they got what's going on, and you know, possess all of these qualities of a great teacher, a great mentor. And so, you know, our hope is that you can try to instill some of those, you know, qualities into our students that will hopefully have their own classroom within a year, if they aren't already in their own classroom as the teacher of record, as an intern. So when you are mentoring and they're in your classroom, just think about what you'll say about the profession of teaching. So we know that it's been very stressful through COVID, but, you know, there's so much negativity about the teaching profession out there right now. And, you know, we try our best to keep our student teachers from hearing that negativity. We want to, you know, to give them all the positives about teaching and why we love teaching. And we want them to hear that, you know, from you and from your school system as well. And we know that as, you know, as a mentor, those are the types of things that you will be, you know, talking to them about and telling them, you know, it is a stressful time, but there's so much reward as well through these times. Characteristics of effective master teachers, you know, we want you to be an advocate, colleague, collaborator, coach, role model, and a listener. A lot of these student teachers are going to be stressed out just from all of their assignments and being in the classroom, especially our interns. Our interns, you know, having their own classroom as a teacher of record, but still having to submit all these assignments for their classes. You know, there's going to be stressful times, and there's times that they may just need an ear, you know, just so that they can talk. And we want you to be that for them, so that, you know, they can talk about what's going on, and if there's anything they can, you know, ask for help with. We want them to feel comfortable to be able to do that. We don't want you to feel like a supervisor. We don't want you to feel like a spy for your principal. Now, I know your principals are probably going to come to you and say, you know, how are they doing? The principals may even want to come in and observe the student teacher teaching at times. This is a way for them to be able to, you know, determine if they may want to hire this student teacher in the future. So we do know that the principals will want to know what's going on, but we don't want you to have to feel like you're going and telling the principal every little thing that's happening with your student teacher. So a mentor wears many hats. I'm not going to read all of these, but we know you are, you know, you are all these things for our student teachers. And we, like I said, we can't thank you enough for your willingness to be able to mentor these students and help us get these teacher candidates certified and graduated and in their own classroom in the very near future, and change the lives of all the students that they're going to be working with in the future. So, like I said, I'm not going to keep reading all this, but, you know, task of the mentor teacher, master teacher, I'm sorry, I say it interchangeably, mentor, master teacher. Master teacher we use for our student teachers, and mentor teacher we normally use for our field experience students. However, we know that you as a master teacher are mentoring our students, so it's confusing, I know. So anyway, we ask that you do this orientation yearly if you're going to have a student teacher, just to refresh you on, you know, the things that we have the student teachers doing during the semester, and the things, the evaluations and observations that we ask you to do during their semester. So we ask you to do that. And then we, you know, knowing your roles and responsibilities, if you have any questions about any specific role that you might play in this semester, just please reach out. We'll be glad to talk about it. And then maintaining documentation and the observations with your student teacher. Like I said, those observations, those checklists that you do, if you want to keep documentation of that for yourself, that's great. But we do ask the student teacher to keep it for sure. And like I said earlier, like for their attendance and their time log, when you go on to you know, approve or deny those hours in the time log, if you have jotted down a day that they were not there, it may make it easier for you to be able to do that. And I will mention here also, I didn't say it earlier when I was talking about the time log, we're not expecting you to go on there every day, on VIA every day, to approve that time log. If you want to do it weekly, that would be fine. If you want to do it every other week, you know, that's fine too. We don't expect you to go on every single day and approve that time log. We do expect the student teachers to keep it updated weekly. So if there's a time that the student teacher goes on and, you know, during one of y'all's, you know, during the week, during the planning time, and the student teacher said, I just updated my time log. If you want to go in and do it at the, you know, at the same time and approve or deny those hours when they do it, that's fine. We do ask them to keep it updated weekly. But for you, we know you've got so much going on, you know, weekly, every other week, things, something like that would be sufficient. And then understanding the criteria for being selected, like I said earlier, you had at least 3 years teaching experience, and your administration recommended you to be a master teacher. And at some point, you have probably mentored some other teacher, whether it be a new teacher in your school, or whether it be a field experience student for GSW or another college. But at some point, you've done some kind of mentoring, and your administration sees that in, you know, as part of who you are as a great mentor. And then you engage with, you know, those professional development, professional growth experiences. You share your best practices and the professionalism with the student teachers. And then number 3, communicating hope and optimism, staying positive with the student teachers and communicating that with them. I'm just going to click through this quickly. I do want to point out the last 2 things, parental and disciplinary. Giving help and ideas related to conferencing and working with parents, and then giving guidance and ideas related to managing students. These are 2 of our main weaknesses of our student teachers. Our parental, conferencing with parents or working with parents, and then also classroom management. Those are the 2 things that our student teachers tell us that they struggle with the most, and those are the 2 things that the master teachers tell us that the student teachers struggle with the most. So if, during the semester, if you see things, that you can, hone in on as far as parents or discipline that you think would help your student teacher, please, by all means, do that. And this is a mentoring framework for mentors. I have this in the PowerPoint. I actually have this as a PDF, and I will send this to you. It's just a good framework that we try to go by here at GSW. And if you want to read this in detail later, please do so. But it's 4 stages in the framework. And like I said, I do have it in a PDF, and I will send that to you. I'll also send you this PowerPoint where you can look through that. So just a quick few notes. Whenever you're doing those evaluations in VIA, there's no surprises if you've conferenced and assessed throughout the semester, like those observation forms that we give you to go through. If you have talked to your student about that and let them know this was a strength, this was a weakness, this is some things you could work on, then once they do see their evaluation, there would be no surprises. Just that good communication with the student teacher, and effective conferencing, matching the development level of the student teacher. Problem-solving climate. If there are problems that arise during the semester, go through and try to pick out the problem and know the facts about the problem, and then we'll move forward from there. We do want you to reach out to the university supervisor or to me or both if there is a problem. I'll tell you, last semester I did have a student teacher that was having an issue with something in the classroom, and the master teacher didn't reach out to us until way later in the semester. We were able to work through that with the student, but we wish we had known a little bit earlier in the semester. So please don't feel like it's a problem if you reach out to us if you notice something going on with one of our student teachers. And if you do have a student teacher that's struggling, like document things like, let's say, absences. If they're missing a lot of days, document those days and let us know as soon as you can that you see a problem with absences, so that we can reach out and we can see what's going on. Not just absences, but really anything in general. If you see a student teacher struggling, please reach out to us and document that for us so that we can see what's going on. If it comes to it, we can put the student on a professional intervention plan to help support them through whatever the problem might be that they're struggling with. And we can help move them through that within a couple of weeks, hopefully. We hope a professional intervention plan only takes a couple of weeks, but we can extend it out if we need to. So we do have that option if we need to put the student on a professional intervention plan. So that's pretty much wraps up everything that I had. I know I moved through that end really quickly, but I do want you to have the PowerPoints. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box now or unmute and ask me now, or you can always email us later if you have any questions. I think I did see a question come in the chat. Give me just a second. Okay, so Megan, I see your question. Is it okay if the two of us have like a conversation? Because your student teacher is a little bit different because she is an intern. We're considering her an intern. So is it okay if we kind of chat about that? Like maybe after the meeting, can you stay online and we can talk about it? Or if you got somewhere you need to go, we can call and talk about it. Is that okay, Megan? Okay, perfect. Are there any other questions right now from anyone? If not, here is my email and my phone number and Miss Whaley's email and phone number. These are our direct numbers. So if you need us, please, please, please feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We want to make this an enjoyable experience for you and our student teachers, and we're meeting with all of them tomorrow. We're excited for them to be back on campus with us, and they are getting really, really excited about coming and starting with you all during pre-planning. So I know I went over a couple of minutes. I'm really sorry. But if you have any questions, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help you out. I am recording this, so I'm going to end the recording now, and I will send the recording out to you and the PowerPoint out to you later. Depending on how long the recording takes, it may be tomorrow before I can get the recording to you.